Gear Tasting Radio is brought to you by Imminent Threat Solutions. ITS provides knowledge that empowers individuals with indispensable skill sets to explore the world and prevail against all threats. Right now, as a special thank you for all podcast listeners, we're offering 10% off in the ITS store. Simply use the code GTR to save 10% at store.itstactical.com. Welcome to Gear Tasting Radio, where we offer an in-depth look into the usage and philosophy behind the equipment in our lives. I am joined, as always, by Rob Henderson.
Hello.
And I'm Brian Black. Today, we are going to talk about the National Preparedness Month,
Man, you
which
got
is
documents and
September.
everything.
I feel very official. Like,
you are ready.
this just in. All right.
Walter Cronkite over
This
here.
just in. National Proclamation Month is here. Preparedness Month. It's a presidential proclamation.
Prognostication proclamation about national preparedness.
Punxsutawney Phil is going to give a speech on national preparedness. So this is something that I feel has been around for a couple years. I think it really started becoming popular last year. And this year I wanted to really highlight National Preparedness Month and talk about it on Gear Tasting Radio. I think we've got a good format and form for that now.
It sounds right up our alley.
Yeah, kind of rather than discussing it via article, I think this is a better format for it because we can kind of talk about the different things that go into preparedness and why it's just not a tinfoil hat kind of thing. Like it's real. So this is something from a proclamation that came out this month from the president. So he's kind of honoring first responders and recapping what the tragedies have been lately, you know, with the flooding and things like that. And that's the main point, I think, of what we'll talk about is really kind of preparing for the disasters that can happen, you know, that aren't. I want to say that you can sometimes have advanced warning and sometimes you don't. So it really depends on what the occurrence is. But I like the part in here where it says we kind of all have a shared responsibility that's critical to maintain readiness. I think that's a good synopsis of kind of what we're getting at too, because the more people that are prepared and that have those things at their disposal, the less emergency responses or response services are going to be taxed because people are kind of self-sufficient. So I think that there is an implication of people being prepared, helping overall everybody, and that's where I kind of think it comes into play with that. But this is kind of a cool thing that I think it's from FEMA. It's ready.gov is the website that you can find this stuff at. And we'll put all this stuff in the links from the, what do you call it?
Episode intel.
Yeah, episode intel. It'll be there. Yeah. But I want to go over kind of the weekly themes that they have for this plan. And they're during the month, they're talking about a lot of different things. So they're using different weeks to focus on different elements of preparedness, so you're not just kind of thinking about everything at once, and I think it makes sense. They really do a good job breaking it down. So like the first week, which is this week of September, they're talking about making and practicing your plan, and that's your emergency plan. And then the next week, week 2, is learning life-saving skills. Week 3 is checking your coverage, meaning insurance and things like that. And then week 4 is talking about saving for an emergency. So those are all pretty big level top-level issues that I think come up during preparedness and
it seems like
disasters.
They front-loaded the important ones, too.
Yeah, I think that, too. And during this, September 15th is a National Day of Action, so we'll get into what that kind of constitutes as well. But I'm kind of just reading through some of the social media content that they have. This is kind of a list of things that they have for entities like us to put out, or people that are concerned about sharing the information to kind of put out to help get the conversation going about Preparedness Month. So really, you know, I think when you talk about preparedness, I think that most of us think we're prepared, but I don't think we truly are because of practice.
Well, we have that great article from the contributor, and his name is escaping me right now, but he wrote about how he thought he was prepared, and then a flood came, and he found out he was not prepared.
Yeah.
And it details kind of the things you should be ready for during a flood or other disaster. And we'll be sure to link that. But this was, as I was reading through these, I just couldn't help but think like, oh man, this is right in that alley of, like you said, you may not have advanced warning for something like a flood.
Right.
It may happen overnight while you're asleep.
Well, and, you know, just kind of talking about flood, this is in here too, because I'm sure we'll get to it. But, I mean, you can have $25,000 in flood damage from just an inch of water in your home. I mean, it's huge.
It gets expensive.
Yeah, and most people don't have flood insurance and don't think about flood insurance until it's too late.
They just assume they're covered.
Yeah, and really, flood insurance is a FEMA product. Just in case anyone's out there that's not familiar with flood insurance, it doesn't come from your actual insurance agent. They just kind of act as the go-between. So you would contact your insurance agent that you have for your homeowner's policy or your renter's policy and say, hey, I'd like to add flood insurance. And it's a pretty low-cost insurance. It's probably $400 a year. On average, $300 to $400. It depends. I think the value of your home dictates the price of the insurance coverage. But, yes, that sounds expensive, but geez, I mean, compared to $25,000 in
insurance always sounds
damage,
expensive before the event. After the event, it's not so bad.
Yeah, and that's the other thing with flood insurance is that it has a 30-day wait period. So it's kind of like buying a gun in some states.
So you can't see rain coming and pick up the phone.
Yeah, go. I want the flood insurance.
Yeah.
So it takes a 30-day window to kind of get issued and be effective on your property. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you're listening to this podcast and you don't have flood insurance, this would be a great time to purchase flood insurance.
Yes.
Yeah. I kind of feel that sometimes it's a waste, but then I think about all the things that have happened that I've seen in the past couple of years. I'm like,
that's all insurance is, hedging your bets.
Yeah,
and
it really is.
I always find that if I have it, nothing will happen. If I don't have it, something happens.
Yeah, I know.
Man, especially for homeowners or renters insurance for theft too.
Oh yeah.
You don't think about it until somebody breaks in, and it's like, now I'm out all my stuff.
Yep. So this kind of starts off talking about just having a conversation over dinner, which I think is a great way to start this kind of thing. I loved reading this in here because I always struggle with that when I'm talking to people about preparing. It's like, well, what do you do? Oh, I've got this and that, and I've got this socked away. Like, oh man, I don't have any of that. They kind of get overwhelmed with where to start.
Sure.
And really, this is a great way to say it. Like, preparing for a family emergency is as simple as a conversation over dinner, and it really is.
Yeah.
It's just talking about it with your loved ones and saying, hey, I want to start doing this. I want to start getting a plan together for us in the case of emergency. I want to be able to stay in contact. I want to know that all our documents are secure. I want to know we have the right insurance in case something happens. I want to know we've got cash in an emergency and we're not scrambling to use our cards that, the electric grid is down and now I can't buy anything. It's like there's just so many facets to that. But
sure.
And this does a pretty good job covering them too, which I really like. So it kind of goes through a couple of different things within this first week, which, that conversation over dinner is kind of a good starting point. And then talking about kind of a fire escape plan. And that's something that we've talked about before, but we've really never talked in depth on it.
Sure.
And it is such a good thing to have, in case of a fire. It kind of goes along with the break-in intruder in the middle of the night kind of thing too. It's a completely different scenario. However, you could be trying to egress your home in the same way as a fire too.
Yeah.
So they really are a little bit tied in, but not necessarily.
I think they're the two fastest timeline things.
Yeah.
When you wake up, there's a fire, you have to go now. There's no like, oh, give me a second to gather.
No, I agree. And that's a good thing to talk about too, is that there is kind of that last minute, oh, I got to get out kind of feeling in something like that too. I mean, there's, I'm trying to think through the different scenarios where that would be happening. And tornadoes are kind of like that too, which we face around this area in Texas all the time. And, everyone's kind of hunkered down in their homes during a tornado, but that's a tough one.
Right.
I don't know if people around here don't practice like escape, egressing their home during a tornado to try to get to a safer place because you never know where it's going to go.
Usually a bad idea to leave the home.
Right, exactly. Which, I think it kind of goes along with the whole bugging in rather than bugging out scenario, too. That's kind of the same in a tornado. However, obviously, we're talking about fire and break-in or something like that, so that's a little different.
Yeah, with a fire, you need to leave the home.
Yep.
Even if you can see where it is and it's contained, you don't know where it's gotten to. And so, staying around during a fire is a horrible idea.
Well, even still, a fire in a single room that you managed to put out, you're still going to have to find a place to go because you get smoke damage and all your clothes. It's
everything that's burned.
It's a nightmare scenario. Yeah. Even if the fire's contained and you put it out, it's in a single room, even in a quarter of the room. Yeah. that smoke can billow through the whole house and through the vents and everything. And, now all your stuff smells like smoke. Yeah. And, the insurance company, if you have insurance, is going to cut you a check to replace all that stuff because it's impossible to get that stuff out.
It's ruined.
Yeah. So anyway, kind of a tangent, but yeah, a fire escape plan is huge. And that is just as simple as saying, hey, if the smoke detectors go off in the middle of the night, this is what I want you to do. Mm-hmm. I don't want you to come try to find me. I want you to open your window up, and I want you to go out, and this is where we're going to meet.
Yeah, we'll meet at this tree or whatever. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so it can be as simple as that, and particularly with kids. I mean, adults are a little more self-sufficient when it comes to that. Obviously, they will, get themselves out, but that's really a topic to talk about even with your loved ones too, because I know that if we didn't kind of have a plan, I would be worried about where Kelly was in the house, and I would be trying to find her rather than getting out.
Yep.
I would just rather know, look, whatever happens, just get out of the house, So
well, and it gives you a chance to work through issues that you might experience. Hey, we're going to go meet here. Okay, well, where's here? Is there something painted or marked or whatever? Is it far enough away from the house? Can everybody get there? It's a good thing to kind of do before you have to do it in an emergency.
Exactly. It's a very good practice to follow too, especially considering that it's kind of a use it or lose it scenario too, because if you haven't talked about it in a while and something happens, you don't have that, I don't want to say muscle memory. It's more the repetition of talking about it to say, oh yeah, this was the drill. We were going to go meet at this place, and I don't need to worry about him. I just need to get out of the house,
Yep.
So,
there's a reason they run fire drills at works and schools and all that kind of stuff.
No, I agree.
It's a good thing to keep up.
So, and then, another thing that they talk about here, which is huge, that I typically overlook is practicing evacuating your home with your animals and things like that too, because that's a big deal with us. I know I've talked about in the past that we use that Chewy subscription service for dog food, and I always have a full bag of dog food that's unopened, ready to pick up and
Great
go
idea.
with me too. So I kind of cycle that in. So, the new bag comes, replaces the old bag, that gets dumped into the dog food container, and then, I kind of keep going like that. Because dog food does have a pretty long shelf life, and we feed dry food that's, made for Dobermans with sensitive stomachs, because our Doberman's a little high maintenance. But anyway.
Get the special food.
Yeah. But anyway, that's something to think about is, hey, I not only need to grab stuff for myself in an emergency, but the dog's got to eat too. So, because dogs can be stress bags as well.
Oh yeah.
So.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, they talk about some things like signing up for local emergency alerts. That's big too. And you can use the hashtag NATL. It's kind of hard to say that.
Yeah, they abbreviated.
It should be NAT Prep, but it's NATL Prep.
NATL Prep.
Yeah, is the hashtag they say you can search for figuring out what local emergency alerts there are in your area. Really, that's something you can call your local police or fire department to. Most of them have a non-emergency number, and you can say, hey, I know you guys probably have access to text alert systems. Can I sign up for that? How do I get to that? So I'm sure those people would be more than happy to talk to you about it.
Well, I've also had good luck on different social media outlets. They'll usually have like a scanner page that'll run just updates of what they hear on the scanners.
Yeah.
Those can help. If somebody hasn't officially put out an update, you can wonder, like, why is that helicopter around? It's like, oh, it's because of this.
It's true. So. That's a good resource too. And then contacting your water and power companies to get on a priority reconnection service. This is something that I've heard about it before, but I don't ever talk about it. So it's great to have that little refresher here in the content for this. So if your loved ones or you are yourself relying on electricity for medical equipment, this is something you need to talk to your power company, water company about too, just in terms of being on something like that. So if they have a brownout or something, they may not cycle off your house because you're dependent on it. So in addition to having a generator. Right. If you rely on electricity for medical devices. Well, and that's one of the things I did want to talk about, so I am glad you brought it up. Yeah. And it's probably a good time to talk about generator stuff, but I've been looking into like the whole home generator stuff. I've gotten a few quotes, and it's very expensive to do. I'm talking like $8,500 an average, but it will run your whole home on a transfer switch that automatically kicks over if the power goes out. So, the guy I was talking to, the electrician that's been doing these for years, he said it's probably a up to 5-second delay and it's back on with the transfer. There is a lot of maintenance involved. I mean, I say a lot, but it's not too much. You just have to check it periodically to make sure it's up and running, and you're testing the system quite a bit to make sure that, you said like, hey, before winter season, make sure you test it, and before the peak of summer when it's getting hot, make sure you test it too. So,
well, we live in like a heavily treed area, and our power doesn't go out frequently, but when it does, it stays out.
Yeah.
We had one instance where we had a storm roll through. My power was down for 5 days. Like 5 days without power, you start to really
when you live in an older neighborhood too, which still has the power lines strung from the poles, whereas new neighborhoods have them buried. So those are less likely to have issues.
We're constantly losing transformers and stuff. So it's just a really good thing to look into. And I mean, that's one of those like price on peace of mind, or not losing the entire fridge full of stuff.
No, it's true, and that just I don't know, I guess the mindset behind that in terms of what that gives you in confidence and, the ability to know that you're prepared is huge. I mean, that's the one thing that I think, outside of natural disaster like fire, tornado, things like that, loss of power is such a huge concern. And most people just say, oh, I'll just deal with it and I'll get some flashlights or candles or what have you, which candles are a bad idea anyway.
Use candles.
Yeah.
Especially with how cheap flashlights are.
Yeah, batteries are cheap too. Make sure you stock up on those. And get lithiums. Just trust me. I've converted. Anyway, I forgot what we were talking about.
Talk about power outages and the importance of being prepared. Preparedness is power.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Hashtag, not an official government sanction.
You should be writing this social media content.
National Prep.
Yeah. So, also it talks in here about talking with your doctor if you're on medications and requesting kind of a 30-day emergency supply, just kind of like I do with the dog food, where you have kind of a 30-day supply in reserve that you're using first as the new stuff comes.
Yeah, the last thing you want to worry about is filling a prescription.
Yeah, exactly. Then, they talk about, they talk about here about flood damage and, mitigating your home against flood damage and impacts of earthquakes. And we did talk about that a little bit, so I'm going to kind of skip over that a little bit, more like the insurance part of it. This is huge too. So like turning off utilities like natural gas and water, though, that's something that not everybody knows how to do.
Very true.
Especially when it comes to like the water at the curb where it comes into the house.
Yeah. Do you have the right wrench ready to go?
Most people don't know that you have to have a tool or a wrench that fits that square bit, basically, that's there to turn the water on.
I have mine hanging in the garage that is made for the water, and it sits in the same location because I've had a plumber cut a pipe wrong, and
that happened to me too.
Whoosh, water. Okay, let's go turn it off.
We actually had a tree get staked, and the guy drove a stake through the main water line coming into the house, which it was a little funky because he wasn't expecting to hit it. When we didn't know where the water line traveled through our house because we've only been in this house for about 2 years. We didn't actually build it, so I didn't see where the water line went into the house. And typically they're in a straight line. They come from the curb and go straight. And this one went at a 45-degree angle through our yard.
Ouch.
And we didn't realize it was the main artery till he already broke it. And he was good about it. He had it fixed within an hour and a half or so. But that's a pretty bad situation.
And good to know where that is to shut it off.
Let's see. It also talks about natural gas and things like that, and having the right detectors, carbon monoxide, natural gas. You should definitely have something for that kind of stuff. I think we've talked about electronics and kind of the what do you call it? The modern Internet of Things.
Like
devices.
Smart home type stuff, yeah. Even if you don't want to jump into that large of a budget, you can get cheaper carbon monoxide detectors.
Yeah, and make sure you're getting a smoke detector that not only detects the smoke, but also the heat. There's 2 different kinds of smoke detectors, and the good ones come with both of those options baked in. And the really good ones will come with carbon monoxide as well, so it detects all 3 of those things. So definitely look for that when you're shopping for smoke detectors. And that's such a, you don't have to go to the $100 models that are the Internet of Things devices. You can buy $30, $40 smoke detectors, But just having them in your home and having new ones and being able to rely on them and having a schedule to change the batteries out that are backup batteries
that you have lots of because you bought a bunch.
Yes,
that's what you said to do.
Yeah, and I'm on a Amazon subscription plan for that, so I get 9 volts delivered to me twice a year. I'm on that so that when I get the batteries, I know it's time to replace them.
I don't
even have to think about it. So I know, hey, 9 volts are in the mail. I didn't order these, and I'm like, oh yeah,
it's for the smoke detector.
Yeah,
they knew. That's great.
And then having enough food and water and meds to last 72 hours, that's kind of a given.
Yep.
But, it's something most people don't think about either. We talked about water storage before, and I like just getting the cases of bottled water. I have multiple cases, so I've got enough for a gallon per person per day in water bottles, just because it's very easy to store and load, and I'm using that from time to time too. We don't typically drink out of water bottles, but if some worker comes to the house or friends come over, we have waters in the fridge kind of ready to hand out for that.
One thing I've seen is they are making water bottles now that are BPA free, so they're labeled with that, which is really good if you're going to store them long term.
Yep, agreed. Also, it says in here, replacing smoke alarms when they're 10 years old. That's a great tip too. Putting smoke alarms at every level of your house and testing them monthly. The one thing you can do, which you should probably do this during a nice time of the year when it's not hot outside like it is right now, but you can literally take your family through an event scenario. You can shut off the power to your house and
maybe with warning, maybe not.
Well, I'm just saying it's a good test of how your preparedness will work. And it doesn't have to be hot, it doesn't have to be cold. It can be a really nice time of the year, so you can kick the windows open. It doesn't have to be the extreme. But just practicing like, okay, well, now I gotta boil water, or now I have to cook without the stove. It just forces you into doing those things, and you'll learn from that, and you'll go, okay, when this happens for real, I'd rather have this, so therefore I need to purchase this before this actually
learn so much.
Yeah, it's great. And then this is kind of where it talks about that National Day of Action on September 15th, where it talks about holding a preparedness event. Possibly that preparedness event could be your power outage, but
there's your time frame. It won't be nice in Texas by that time, but other places I hear it's really nice.
And it does mention CERT, which is great too. That's Community Emergency Response Training. That's a huge thing that I would recommend to anybody. I did it here locally in Fort Worth, and they even give you a backpack full of supplies at the end of the class to have for a call out if they need you. So basically you're learning like triage stuff is the big thing. You're learning cribbing to like get things off people or structures.
Yep.
It's really kind of being there to assist local resources in an event of an emergency. So, if we had another huge tornado blow through downtown Fort Worth, which we did in like 96 or 7 or something like that. I forget when that was. But they would probably call CERT to help triage that and use
first
for additional
responders
resources.
Get slammed.
Exactly.
I mean, those are the times when you call 911, you may not make it through.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we talked about in the very beginning of this is, the more the people are prepared, the less you're taxing those resources that are going to be taxed already. So, why wouldn't you want to do something like that?
Yep.
But, yeah, I would definitely recommend CERT. And CERT actually gave me the tool to turn off the gas and water.
Nice.
It was included in that, so kind of cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Couple other tips. Anything that can catch fire, move away from your stovetop. Obviously, these are kind of some duh things.
It's a riveting tip. You'd be surprised, though.
Yeah. Keep anything that can burn at least 3 feet from your furnace, water heater, and other heat-generating equipment. Have your chimneys and vents cleaned and inspected at least once a year. Chimney fires are a real thing. That's something you should definitely kind of think about, too. It talks about CPR training, learning how to use an AED. Those are big things, too. And then now it starts kind of the week 3 resources, which really is kind of checking your coverage. So this is where it talks about insurance and making sure your policies are up to date. Obviously, the flood insurance kind of flows into this as well. So we already talked about that. I won't spend too much time on that.
It's a good thing to double check, though.
Yeah. This is a kind of an interesting statistic, too. So it says that 80% of households affected by Hurricane Harvey didn't have flood insurance. And that's crazy.
Man.
And I mean, you can imagine just the devastation that those people
and then finding out
went
it's
through.
not going to be covered.
Yeah. I mean, I know that FEMA stepped in and did some things, but I don't remember exactly what they did or, it's all relying on government funding. So I mean, the funding has to be there for FEMA to help out like that too. So
which is probably why they're wanting people to get prepared.
Yeah.
So it doesn't cost as much.
Yeah.
Which I think is great overall. Like you said, it taxes less resources.
And I don't know if we mentioned this during insurance or not, but most, if not all, insurance policies, whether it's homeowners or renters insurance policies, do not cover anything for flooding. They may cover like a sink that breaks, or a dishwasher that breaks or something.
That, but not like an act of
Correct.
God flood.
Yeah, so that's where the FEMA flood policy kind of comes in too. And this is a good tip, and we've talked about this before, but taking photos or video of your personal belongings and things you have in your house, most people don't even think about that, because let's use the scenario of something wiping out your entire house, and you weren't even able to look to see what you had to know what to replace. Most people don't keep a running inventory list of what they have in the house. Most people.
I don't have a spreadsheet with serial numbers and stuff.
I don't either. I'm kidding. You should actually do that. That's actually a really good tip.
You should know, like...
I'm talking about the big things, like your TVs, your firearms, your...
Yeah, if it has a serial number, I have it
your
written
vehicles.
Because it can help you track back what it was, too.
Right.
You can input the serial number, like Apple products. You can find out exactly what it was, the make, how much it had, capacity, all that kind of stuff.
Well, and the good thing is that you don't necessarily have to keep receipts these days either. Something you can go back to is a credit card statement to say, hey, this is when I purchased this. Or if you know a date, like a relative date is a great thing to keep track of too. So not only the serial number, but kind of an approximate date of purchase, so you know, hey, I need to pull this statement from my bank during this time because now I have to prove that I bought this item. So it's kind of
not just plug and play, especially when it comes to insurance.
Yeah, you have to claim, you have to prove that you had those things, and that's where like the video or photos or receipts or
just
statements come into play.
It can't hurt.
Yes, absolutely. And this is, I know this is obvious, but anywhere it rains, it can flood, and that's just kind of nature. I mean, yes, you may think that I live on the high ground and I'm not affected by it, but
until it becomes the low ground.
I mean, you can look at pictures of Houston.
Oh yeah,
during that flooding, and they're literal. I mean, they showed it before. There's a cool
street
before.
Signs, like
4
inches
amazing,
above the
man.
water. Yeah.
It's just amazing how flooded that stuff got.
Yeah,
and it was a hurricane that moved through, and it dropped in a abnormal amount of rain, but still, you just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, and then it kind of goes into the last part, which is kind of the savings aspect of this, and they call this the Save for Emergency Week, which this is important too. We talked about kind of the financial aspect in the beginning. So this is like, what documents should you have in an emergency? How will you pay your bills in a disaster? And it says, the statistic of 40% of Americans don't even have $400 in savings. So it's a big concern, and cash is king when it comes to emergencies, and having that at your disposal. Yes, there's an inherent danger of keeping cash in your home. However, it doesn't have to be a huge amount. It has to be enough to...
A few $100s could get you
enough
through
to
a
be
lot.
able to pay for a hotel room or something for you and your family for a couple of days while you figure out what's going on, or figure out who can help you out to take you in to live there temporarily or something until your home gets fixed. Like it's a big thing, and also that's a good conversation to have with friends and family too. Hey, I want to open up a dialogue. We want to open our home to you if something happens. I'd love it if we could do the same.
Get the community aspect going.
Exactly. Know who your friends are you can depend on, and not have to ask them in the emergency situation. Having already
Mike,
had
how's
that
it going?
talk. I mean, it does go a long way.
Sure.
You don't want to, because no one wants to turn anybody down. It's just not in human nature to be like, I don't really care about you, and especially with close friends and family. But
and imagine you can come in with supplies and stuff that you brought. I mean, you're not as much of a burden if you're prepared a little bit.
Yeah, and even if you have some cash to kick towards their their mortgage or something, to just as a gesture, it's just a good thing to have. We talked about food, gas, lodging after a disaster, setting aside a small amount from each paycheck to go in your savings account. That's always a good tip, no matter in an emergency or not. Highly recommend that.
National Preparedness Year. You should just be doing that all the time.
Yep. And then kind of it ends with some stuff on, do you know what kind of help your community provides during a disaster? You can talk to community representatives for that.
Well, good thing to learn in that CERT too.
Yeah, and CERT's a
learn what's
great
gonna
way.
happen.
CERT is a great way to do that because it will teach you about all that stuff that's available to you within the scope of your local community. So community is a big thing. I mean, even if it's just getting out after an event and helping move branches, or grabbing a chainsaw that you have and helping cut branches off somebody's fence it fell into that they don't have a chainsaw. It's just, those are all things that go a long way with people. And, I've tried to kind of reiterate that to myself, that I want to be that resource to help. A couple of months ago, well, actually it was probably a year and a half ago now, we had some major wind damage come through, and Kelly and I were scheduled to fly out the next morning, like super early in the morning. And we had a huge windstorm come through, and we didn't feel like it did anything because we don't have huge trees, so we didn't see limbs that fell or anything like that. But we got in the car that next morning to go to the airport. It was 4 in the morning or something like that, and we drove through the neighborhood on our way out, and there was just huge limbs down. Everyone was like, "Oh my God, I feel so horrible about leaving," because I felt bad. Like, I have a chainsaw, I would have been right there helping those people, and I felt horrible because I didn't have the opportunity to help. Yeah. So anyway, just something to think about.
Very true.
So yeah, National Preparedness Week. Hopefully you guys got some good tips in this, and hopefully you can kind of take on some of this and focus on doing some of these things yourself in September, especially just starting out that conversation. If that's all you do in September is just start the conversation, it'll go a long way. So. All right, thanks for listening to Gear Tasting Radio. Remember, if you have questions, use the pound tag Gear Tasting, and we will, again, put all those resources in the episode intel for you. We've got some articles that talk about preparedness. We've got everything that we talked about from ready.gov and the FEMA stuff, so it will be a big list of resources for you to check out after you're done listening to the podcast. Head on over to either our site, itstactical.com. We've got a running list in the right sidebar for that, or even in the show notes from the podcast itself on Apple iTunes,
whatever they're calling
Apple Podcasts. I can never remember. But while you're there looking at our show notes on Apple Podcasts, you could kind of review our podcast. It would be great. So hopefully it's a 5-star review. We would very much appreciate it. It allows Apple to kind of get our podcast shared around more when it's got a higher rating, and we're doing really good. I love the feedback coming in. A lot of it's very funny, so we really appreciate the reviews and ratings that are coming in, so thank you very much for that. Last but not least, we will put a link in our episode intel to our Crew Leader membership. That is our way of giving back to you in return for your membership and helping to support the show. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.